Thanks, Tim, and thanks to Share Cafe for the opportunity to present Future Metals at this forum for the first time. So Future's a pretty new company. We listed on the ASX in July of this year. In fact, we've just had a dual listing on the London market on AIM, actually as of last night. So dual listed as of July on the ASX, and then we commenced drilling in August, and we've been drilling for a couple of months now, had samples in a lab for probably a month, so expect to start reporting news flow in terms of drilling results imminently. So Future is entirely focused on the Panton PGM project in northern Western Australia. We have 100% ownership. If I just flick through a couple of slides and give you a quick overview on the company and the project. So we have 100% ownership of what is actually Australia's highest grade platinum palladium project. It's a substantial resource as well, so it's not just grade, but it's also got size. So it's over 2 million ounces of PGMs plus gold plus nickel at over 5 grams PGMs. So in fact, it's probably one of the highest grade undeveloped PGM deposits in the world. It's quite advanced in terms of drilling, so most of the resources I'll show you sits in the measured and indicated category, so substantial confidence in that resource. But importantly, that resource is completely open, and the drilling that we're doing at the moment is looking to expand the resource, and we see significant scope to expand the resource substantially from that 2 million ounces. The resource starts at surface, so some of it will be open pittable, and then the remainder will be underground, and obviously the grade supports underground operation. There has been a feasibility study completed on this project some time ago, 20 years ago. In fact, there's been no work, no drilling undertaken on this project for 20 years. But importantly, the project sits on granted mining leases. And if I just flick through a couple of slides here, the board and management team, if I just go back, the board and management team, just quickly touching on this, I won't go into too much detail, but obviously a lot of experience on the board in creating shareholder value and developing projects and creating corporate outcomes or actually taking projects into production. But also a lot of PGM experience, and not just that, but also experience with this project in the past. So Alan Mulligan is on our board as a technical director. He's a first-class mining engineer out of South Africa. He actually sat on the board of the company that completed a feasibility study on this project back in the early 2000s, representing Lonmin, where he was working at that stage. And Lonmin invested a substantial amount of money into this project. And Alan has been involved in the development and the management of several similar style PGM projects in South Africa. So a great addition to the board. And then Mick McMullen is an advisor to the company, and Mick ran many successful companies, but most relevant to Future Metals, ran Stillwater Mining, the largest PGM producer outside of South Africa and Russia. Before that was taken over by the South African PGM producer called Sibanye. And he was familiar with the project from his time at Stillwater, because he was quite interested in potentially acquiring the project going back a few years. And then our exploration manager actually was the guy that drilled out a majority of the current resource 20 years ago. So a lot of experience, not just in the PGMs, but also with this project. I'll just flick through the next slide then, just quickly. So the company's capitalised at around $65 to $70 million, trading around 20 cents. Well funded. Our cash position at 30 September, just over $8 million. So well funded for the current 10,000 metre drilling program that we're undertaking at the moment. We'll just move on to the next slide. I guess this is what's unique about this project. I mean, PGM projects of this quality are typically located in South Africa or Russia, and that's where 85% of the platinum palladium production currently comes from. So to have a PGM project at sort of 5 grams per tonne sitting in a tier 1 jurisdiction of Western Australia is very unique and very strategic in terms of value. It's ideally located as well in terms of developing a project and infrastructure. In fact, it actually sits on the side about 1 kilometre off the Great Northern Highway, which runs up to the Port of Wyndham, where currently Panoramic is exporting nickel concentrates from. So excellent infrastructure. As I said, feasibility work previously done, which didn't identify any fatal flaws in terms of environmental issues, and gives us a great leg up as we move this project towards development. Just moving on to the next slide then, just touching on the geology. So the mineralisation as it's currently modelled is hosted within chromatite reefs that start at surface, reasonably steeply plunging, but then they flatten out as they wrap underneath a syncline layered intrusion structure. And that has, that resource, as I said, is completely open. The resource is currently contained across 4 zones, the A, B, C and D zone, and we're drilling across each of those zones. If I just touch on the resource, I think on the next slide, you can see here, as I said before, over 80% of the metal currently sits in the measured and indicated category, which is obviously a large cost involved in a feasibility study is often drilling out inferred material to measured and indicated. That's already been done here. The resource currently sits within 2 reefs, the top reef and the middle reef. There's in fact a 3rd reef which is not included in this resource, the lower reef. But of those 2 reefs, a substantial amount of the mineralisation and the resources contained in this top reef, which is actually higher grade, and you're looking at about just over 6 grams PGM and gold plus 0.3% nickel, so exceptionally high grade. These 3 reefs are a few metres wide each, and they sit about 15 to 20 metres apart. Now, something that hasn't been considered in the past is mineralisation sitting between these reefs, and there is substantial mineralisation there. It may not be at the same grade, but when you bulk that out, you've got potentially a 50 to 70 metre wide horizon to look at expanding this resource. So something that we're looking at with the current drilling is not only extending this high grade down dip as an high grade underground resource, but also looking at bulking out the top part of this resource at surface to form a large open pitable resource. Maybe it's slightly lower grade, but substantially more metal. So that's the current drilling, and we hope to be able to report on that very soon with drilling results. So just flick through the next slide then, just on the metallurgy. So there's been a lot of metallurgical work done on this project. Probably most relevant is met work done by the previous owner of this project, Panoramic Resources, that was looking to develop the project and put the ore through their nickel concentrator just up the road, about 40 kilometres up the road. So they did a lot of flotation test work. And back in 2015, really had a breakthrough with this project, and we're able to demonstrate producing a very high grade PGM concentrate, exceptionally high grade, over 200 grams per tonne, in fact 270 grams per tonne PGMs, to a very high recoverable concentrate of over 80% of the PGMs reporting there, and a very low mass pool of about 2%. So that's a significant breakthrough. That's just through conventional crushing, grinding and flotation. And that was done on a bulk sample that was extracted from the deposit through a exploration decline that was put in place. So part of the drilling that we're doing at the moment is looking at repeating this metallurgical test work across the entire resource, and that's in train at the moment. So we expect to look to be able to develop this project as a conventional crush, grind, flotation plant and export a concentrate. But just flick through the next slide in terms and start touching on the upside here. So here you can see the reefs outcropping at surface has been mapped in this image here. The red zone is the area that is currently being drilled, and the yellow reef is the area that has not had any drilling. So in fact, about 8 kilometres of the 12 kilometres that has been mapped at surface of mineralised reef is yet to be drilled. So that gives you some idea of the potential to grow what is already a substantial resource. And also this T1 target up to the north there, I'll just quickly touch on, if you look at the image in the right corner of this slide, we have our geochemistry. So that's just anomalous platinum, palladium at surface. And this T1 target actually has a much larger soil anomaly than sits over the current resource. And that is not included in the resource and it's had very limited drilling. And we see real bulk tonnage opportunity at T1 and that T1 target, and we'll be undertaking a bit of drilling on that. Flick through into the next slide. Just also not only bulk tonnage opportunity to grow this resource, but also high grade at depth. And you see here the pinkish red zones, the hottest colours are the high grade zones, and you can see in the central there's a high grade plunging zone that has not been followed up and it's completely open with drilling. So we've actually drilled a couple of holes chasing that high grade plunge to expand the high grade resource at depth. Flick through to the next slide. Now, so just in summary, we have what is Australia's highest grade PGM project with a substantial resource, but we view this resource as being very much an interim resource now, and we look to grow the resource substantially through a number of facets, as I've touched on. We've got a drilling program that's well underway. We've done about 4,000 metres of drilling now since August. And as I said, we've had samples in the laboratories for probably a month now. So as everyone's aware, assay turnaround time is quite long at the moment, but we expect to start reporting results imminently there. And this project is unique in that it is a very high-grade PGM deposit sitting in Tier 1 jurisdiction of Western Australia, which we think not only has development opportunities and advantages, but brings significant strategic value to the project and to Future Metals. So that's it in summary, Tim. So thanks for the opportunity to present today.
Thanks, Justin. Can you just go back a step? PGMs, platinum, palladium, iridium, iridium, ruthenium. Can you give us a bit more colour on what these minerals are actually used for from an industry perspective?
Yeah, well, platinum and palladium are probably the greenest metals you can get, really. I mean, so they are used predominantly in catalytic converters at the moment, and so are critical metals for emission control. It's obviously a very topical issue at the moment. And so vehicle loading of PGMs has increased substantially over the last few years as tighter emission controls have come into place. And that's resulted in significant demand for platinum and palladium. And then, as you're saying, platinum and palladium prices have responded accordingly, and we're sitting at record highs and come off a little bit, but still at very close to all-time highs, and actually sit at about 4 to 5 times the price of when this project was last looked at back in 2003. And so we see a very positive outlook for both platinum and palladium, as there's a growing focus on emission control, and also platinum is going to have a greater use in hydrogen production, both storage and production going forward.
I was going to ask you a question on hydrogen there. One of the questions which kind of rolls into our next question is that it sounds like it's a great resource. Why didn't Panoramic develop the project? Was that because of where the pricing of those commodities were at that time?
I think there's a few aspects to that. Certainly pricing of platinum and palladium at the time, which when they last looked at it, I think were half the current prices. So that's certainly a factor. Secondly, they had some exploration success at their Savannah project and discovered the Savannah North deposit, which they're now developed and are putting that back into production there. So I guess their focus remained on nickel, and they extended their resource. And also they went through a period of rationalising their business and offloaded a number of their non-core, non-nickel projects. And in fact, this project didn't come straight from Panoramic. There was a private investment group that were in the right place at the right time. We were able to secure ownership of the project at a time when Panoramic was needing some cash up front to develop and get back into production at their Savannah operation.
And just one more question, Justin. Apart from drilling, is there any other exploration methods that suggest major extension of the ore body?
Well, the chromite reefs are, as you see in the bushveld in South Africa, they're very, very consistent and very continuous. It really is drilling, but the geology that's well understood, really does indicate that these reefs will just continue at depth, as I said, underneath this layered intrusion. So we're very confident it's just a matter of drilling and chasing the mineralisation.